Hey, it's Mother Funny Time with Andie and Angie.
2 cousins, 8 kids, 1 grandkid, 2 states.
And a whole lot of fun. Woo! Welcome back, Mother Funny Tribe. It's Angie and Andie, and we're here to talk about your intrusive thoughts.
Ugh.
We want to hear all about them. We want to hear them right away.
No, we don't. I don't want to hear. I don't. Okay, I just need to say, everybody, Andie chose this topic. I'm just going to call you out right now.
I did.
Right now, everybody.
I chose this topic.
Although
I like to get deep and psychological.
Our Mother Funny Tribe probably could pick. If they had to pick which one of us would choose this topic, I'm sure everyone could figure out. That's Andie.
Okay, here's a quiz. Who would talk about Santa Claus?
Yes!
Who would talk about seasonal depression? Who would talk about Valentine's crafts?
Woo!
Who would talk about anxiety disorder?
Wah, wah. And if you guys got that little pop quiz correct, have some coffee. Starbucks.
Woo! Look, we balance each other out.
Clearly.
That's all I'm going to say. Some people live in all fun worlds. Some people live in dark reality. So we need each other. We need each other.
Last week was influencers. This week is intrusive thoughts.
See? It's motherhood is influencers and intrusive thoughts. I mean, that sums it up right
Pretty
there.
much. I just want to say shout out to the Mother Funny Tribe because, hey, they made it through January, the longest month of the year.
Oh my gosh. I'm going to just tell you that we're recording on the 31st, and it is still January today. It is still.
No, it's not. It's in February.
It's playing in February. By the time you guys hear this, I'll be on my 3rd plane flight since January started. That's how long this month is.
That's why you want to talk about intrusive thoughts. Because of all the traveling you've done, all the plane airport anxiety is
I know. One of my intrusive thoughts was sitting in the plane after that window blew off that panel blew off that plane, looking over and being like, what if that blew off right now? It's a new one. Now that's what I get to think of when I jump on a plane.
Do you remember that lady? Was it last year when she was screaming and she was like, I'm not sitting there. And she got off the plane and it was her video went viral and it was this crazy thing. Now I get on the plane and I'm looking who's going to be the one yelling that we need to land the plane?
How does everybody's mental health look? Anybody with intrusive thoughts that they're not letting go of right now? Anybody dwelling on intrusive thoughts that I need to confront or give them a lollipop or something? I don't know. Yeah, intrusive thoughts. So start us off, Angie. Give us something.
Give you something?
Entertain me.
Okay, this is a tough topic. So I don't want to talk about it, but I am ready to. This is a team podcast. Andie had to sit through all my Santa Claus stories. I owe her one.
I made you talk about the oldest child.
For 2 episodes. 2 episodes. Yes, it's true. And I think something that we're not going to talk about is all the dark, intrusive thoughts. Because
we're not going to.
We don't want to do that.
Some of us might not.
Okay, good point. Some of us on this side of the screen aren't going to mention it. Because sometimes you could hear something and then you're like, wait, should I worry about that? If someone else says something, it's oh, wait, what is that? But no, they're often triggered by anxiety, stress, depression, trauma, or an underlying mental health condition. Intrusive thoughts, they could be brought on by biological factors such as hormonal shifts or imbalances in the brain chemistry or environmental stressors. I mean, let's be real. If you're going to talk about motherhood, just giving birth is traumatic. So obviously there's going to be trauma in that whole situation. Sometimes people's pregnancy could be traumatic, or giving birth could be traumatic, or time at the hospital could be traumatic. So this could get brought on even before you have a baby, and then it can just continue and continue. Aren't you glad you're a mom? This is great.
Woo! Well, and I think it's good to point out too that like everybody has intrusive thoughts. Like intrusive thoughts are like when you're driving over a bridge and you're like, all of a sudden picture yourself just like driving off of the bridge. You're not going to do it, but it just is that thought that No, we'll work on denial next week. I'm just trying to explain what it is. Everybody has those and they're silly and you're like, whoa, where'd that come from? And then, but you're not suicidal. They just like happen. They just pop in your minds and they're not your thoughts. They're just thoughts that get in there. And sometimes they're creepy and disturbing and sometimes they're just funny or weird, but like it happens to everybody, but it especially can happen to moms and especially postpartum. When my daughter Daisy was, she went to a prenatal. She went to a prenatal mental health class and she was like, Mom, that was the first and only time I've heard about intrusive thoughts happening, that they're a big part of postpartum life. And she's like, it was really nice because I was ready. Like I knew they were coming. I knew what they were and I could get rid of, dismiss them, not worry about them. But she said had she not been told that, it would have freaked her out. And I'm like, yeah. And that happens to all moms. All of a sudden we have this little bundle that we're trying to keep alive. And you can picture all of a sudden your baby falling, your baby dropping your baby. What if I drop my baby? What if the baby sucking on a bottle and the nipple like comes off and chokes it? Like all these little, I know this is killing you, huh, to listen to this. What if rainbows just fly out of the sky and the world is covered in rainbows? What if your baby's hair turns pink? Is that better? I'm trying to think of intrusive thoughts that are not real but could make you happy. What if Santa Claus just popped out of the TV and gave me presents?
Okay, so what Andie is doing is correct in the fact that she's saying not many people are talking about this. So let's talk about it for 2 whole episodes.
That's why.
Let's normalize this because
you need like a stress ball while I talk about it.
So uncomfortable right now. Because every single person at some point in their life has had an intrusive thought, because it's not a thought that you want. It just is like a flash. Like it just all of a sudden comes into your mind and then it can quickly exit, or it could get into a loop. And that's kind of, we'll talk about that later if that, by chance happens. They are unwanted, usually. A lot of these thoughts are unwanted. They could be anxiety provoking. Some can be distressful thoughts, like Andie has mentioned. I will not give examples, but Andie can continue.
Some are just Santa.
A big part of it is they're uncharacteristic. Like they're not your typical thoughts. Yeah. It can just be a thought that you usually wouldn't think, and all of a sudden you have that specific thought. Sometimes they can be repetitive. Sometimes they can be overwhelming. Because it's intrusive, like that's what the name is because it's not what you want. It's your brain having that thought, but it's unwelcome. It's not like you're expecting it, you're hoping to have this thought. It just actually just happens. Now, I would say when I'm going to an airport and then on the plane, I almost do expect some intrusive thoughts to happen. Due to my airplane anxiety. Like I know that's coming. But in general, like living life, like you're saying. But a huge part of it could just be any type of a life stressor can cause intrusive thoughts. And that's when you're talking about having a baby, or now say you're a working mom. Nope, we're not going to say that. Say you're a mom who works outside the home. We've already done that podcast. And now you're all of a sudden staying at home to take care of your baby or your infant, or maybe to continue to take care of your toddler or whatever. That is a huge life change. That is a huge life stress. And so now your body's adjusting to it, adapting to it. And now you might be having these thoughts that you weren't expecting because of the stress that's going on in your life. So I think people sometimes have to realize, okay, this is happening, and we'll get into like why it could be happening moving on. But a big issue, and why a lot of moms have been dealing with this a lot more recently, was because of COVID happened. 4 years ago, all of a sudden, we weren't expecting this like illness, disease, virus, pandemic. It's been called so many things. And now moms are even isolated. So first you're going through this like mega huge stress. You're concerned about your children. You're concerned about your own health. You're concerned about your parents' health and your friends' health. And then all of a sudden you're isolated too. And now you're having these thoughts, but you couldn't even go anywhere. So that kind of, I think, also really has impacted it, and why, God bless Andie, she wants to talk about it.
I do. But you know what started it is that I had several conversations within like days from different people, all having to do with intrusive thoughts. And I'm like, this is something that's not talked about. And I think that if you're in the church, it can be talked about, but in a different way, in a way that's like, well, those intrusive thoughts are not yours. They're like the devil, or maybe it could be God warning you. And it becomes this like even scarier thing because you're not understanding what they are. And if you're trying to keep a baby alive, right? Like you have your newborn and all of a sudden say your intrusive thought is that you're going to drop the baby. And I'm sorry, Angie, but I'm just going to say one that's not bad. They can get even worse, but I'm just doing a simple one. A drop the baby.
That's simple.
Then you might, simple. It could be worse.
You're going to
We won't even talk.
What if you drop the baby while you're sitting on the couch with rugs and
yes,
mats?
we'll do that. And
blankets.
Pillows underneath. Oops. I feel like that's not a very intrusive thought. That sounds like fun. The baby's like,
in a bounce house.
Anyway.
On the trampoline.
So we're just humor me. Pretend that people, I hit my microphone, have these. Where was I?
Sorry. I'll take ownership for that. That's my fault. No, that people have these thoughts, and what do you do with it? Because no one's talking about it.
And if they think, yeah, and so then they think, one, there's a lot of shame people can have because these thoughts come in, and generally, like, they could even be like violent or whatever, and you're not thinking about it. It just pops in your head, and you're like, what's wrong with me? Is that deep inside of me? Is this who I am? But like Angie was saying, it's not your thought. It's just something our brains do. And I did read one psychologist was saying, I think in the article you sent me, which is that like, it could be because, as moms, part of our like role is to protect these kids. And so our minds are always looking for ways that we can be protecting our kids. And so without even thinking, something scary, like a thought can pop in, and all of a sudden we're holding our babies tighter. Like if we have this thought that we're going to accidentally drop our baby, then we'll hold him tighter, or we'll hold, if we have this thought that our stroller is going to like fly into the street, we'll hold our stroller tighter, that kind of thing. Like that's what it could be used for. The problem is when we take those thoughts and we think that they're either a warning to us that we should be listening to, or like you were saying, they become obsessive, because then it can either be caused by anxiety or it can trigger anxiety, because we'll take that thought and we'll think either I'm being warned or this is who I really am. Like if you're dropping your baby, you're like, oh my gosh, is this in me to like just drop my baby? But no, it's not. It's not, like Angie said, your thought. So I think there's a lot of fear with new moms who experience this sometimes for the first time. But it's important.
Yes, and it's not a reflection of who the mom is or their parenting style. It doesn't identify who you are as a mom or as a person, because like we said, every single person has at some point experienced it. And sometimes you might have that thought once and then you let it go and you never, ever, ever have that thought again. You might even eventually forget that you had that thought, or other times you can be kind of set in that loop. Okay, have you heard this? I heard this years ago from Oprah, one of my faves.
Oh, well, tell me what Oprah said.
We're all observers of our thoughts. Okay, so a thought could come in and we're just observing that. We're not that actual thought. So like if you just are thinking right now, like if I say think of a red square, you're going to think of a red square.
Yes.
If I say think of a palm tree, you're thinking of a palm tree. Or if I say like, think of the sun shining on a hot summer's day, automatically you're going to think of those things. Okay, you're not actually a red square. You're not actually a palm tree. You're not actually the sun. It's just a thought that kind of you thought and then you can let go of. And so what happens is sometimes moms will have that specific thought and then all of a sudden they're thinking it's their identity and something's wrong with them. Or like you're talking about, they have shame or they're concerned or they might think they have all these issues. And it's like, well, actually, it's pretty typical to have a thought here or there, like that flash thought, that just kind of comes in. You're like, whoa, where did that come from?
Does it ever make you shake sometimes? Like when I get a really weird thought that like pops in out of nowhere, I'll be like, like it goes away. But sometimes it'll make me like jump or be like, no. And I'm like, did somebody just see me do that? Like if they're strong enough, like if it's a quick one that I'm like, where'd that come from? It'll like make me like audibly be like, which makes me look crazy. I get it.
Hey, I didn't say that.
No. But like they happen, they pop up, but they're just I think more prevalent during motherhood, especially at the beginning, especially when your kids are little. And then if anything scary happens, like your kids have an illness or something, then, or an accident, or, something's scary has happened, you're doing it more. Like it triggers, and new warnings, like things you see in the news can trigger it. I was talking to my child the other day and I'm like, hey, when you were in school, did you have intrusive thoughts about guns? And she's like, about shooters, like, were you aware? She's like, yeah, every day. But that was because of all the news that's come out. And I remember when my kids were little, one of the things that was like anxiety inducing to me was thinking about earthquakes. And I would be in any store where things were piled high, like Costco or Home Depot or Babies R Us, and I'd be like, I got to get out of here, because I would think I could just picture an earthquake coming and things falling, and I would dwell on it. And that was the thing. And then I'm like, am I supposed to like be aware? Is there going to be an earthquake? You know what I mean? Like all those things you're going through, you're tired, you're hormonal, you're trying to keep your kids protected the best you can. And then you're in Babies R Us and there's, a 3-story high stroller hanging on a shelf and you picture a earthquake and you're like, what if it landed on us? How many of us would make it? Like, how would I get my kids out of here? What if there was, somebody coming into the store? How would I get my kids out of here? Like all these things. And if you think that those thoughts could be a reality, that's when I think they can become more anxiety inducing. But to recognize, like Angie was saying, that they're not you, just because you think them doesn't mean it's going to happen. It's not reality. It's just something that pops in your head. You can be free.
It can be part of your environment. It's so funny you mentioned earthquakes, because when we lived in California, I mean, you could be driving across the bridge and be like, oh my gosh, what if there was an earthquake right now? Like you do have those thoughts in California.
Every time.
100% of the time. I live in Texas. I'm not worried about an earthquake. A tornado, maybe, but that's the blessing. They give you all these warnings. So you're not as stressed out because they warn you many days in advance sometimes. Like it could be a tornado. It could be a tornado. Or in California, like they call it earthquake weather, and someone will be like, oh, it's earthquake weather. And all of a sudden you're like, it's earthquake weather, which earthquakes really aren't ran by the weather, but it's something people say. But part of it is figuring out too, like, is that an intrusive thought or is there actual, like some truth to that? Like, they say anytime you go into a movie theater, you need to look for the exits. Okay, look for the exits and then move on. But if you're going to sit there and be like, look for the exits and this is why and and you start like rehearsing it in your mind, okay, that might have gone a little bit too far or been a little bit too much, or that's when anxiety could possibly kick in. So it's kind of figuring out, like, is this nature or like the mama bear or the protection or me being on high alert because I'm a mom and that's why I'm trying to be aware and make sure, like you're saying, like everybody's safe and everything's okay? Or is this something that's totally out of the blue, uncharacteristic, kind of came like barging in, I wasn't expecting it, and trying to figure out a little bit, because you don't want to, again, get looped in on that, but to determine also, was this an intrusive thought, or hey, do I need to be aware of this? I'm looking for the exits. Or like you're saying, well, if there was an earthquake, those would fall on your head, Where is the exit?
Yes.
Where do I need to run to if there is an earthquake?
Yeah, I think what you're saying, like, it's good to be aware, especially of your surroundings, for sure. We do have to be safe. It is not the safest world. But I think that when you just continue to play it out or you have it over and over, I know for myself, once in a while I'll get an intrusive thought where like I'll be walking and I'll see like a guy in front of me and maybe he has a backpack or something. He looks a little bit scary. And all of a sudden I'm like, what if he's violent? And then I start thinking of how to get out of it. But then after I realize it's intrusive thought, I start really like playing it in my mind because it's fun. I'm like, what could I do? Okay, I would kick him there.
Oh, gosh.
And all of a sudden in my mind, I'm like a kung fu master.
Martial arts Andie.
And which I have not taken.
Sensei Andie.
But in my mind, in my imagination that I let run.
She's a black belt.
I'm sitting there holding him down while the cops come. And I'm like, I got your guy. And they're like, Andie, we need a girl like you on the force. And I'm like, well, okay.
Yeah, you're in an action movie. It's amazing.
So sometimes that's what happens with intrusive thoughts too. But yeah. So
you don't take it.
Do you remember
don't
having
take it too seriously, is what you're saying. Like if it's something that you're like, okay, all of a sudden you have a black belt in Krav Maga.
Yeah. If
you're
they're
like, call 911. Let's go.
Like for them, because I've taken them down, I want to make sure they're okay.
Right.
But I've just saved everybody and everything. Maybe he had a bomb. I probably diffused it. I don't know. I pulled the right wire.
Do you have a cape also in this? You then fly through the store.
They're like, we would like to put a symbol in the sky to call you every time the city's in trouble. And I'm like, I'll be there.
The city has banners placed all around with your face on it. That day is, observed every year. It's a national holiday.
And it was all from the one creepy guy in front of the movie theater.
It's amazing. It's amazing how tough you are. Way to go. You're like...
Thank you. Thank you for recognizing.
A rock star.
I mean...
A kung fu master rock star. It's impressive.
You didn't know. You didn't know.
I didn't. I mean, the things that I'm learning in this great podcast...
You're learning that there are intrusive thoughts. Now, if they're a disturbing thought, then I just shake and like, and then it's gone.
I'm trying to think if I've been around you and all of a sudden you start shaking. Like, I think I would notice that, but
well, it'd be
I don't know if I actually would.
Like, I feel like the reason I'm saying it is because I was thinking about this and randomly, like, I was like sitting there and a thought pot, and I don't even remember what the thought was because it was like, but it was one of those where I was like, but I was all alone and I'm like, I do that. I hope I don't do that in public. I hope I'm just doing that because I'm home alone, but I don't know. I might do that in public. And then there's times where I'll be like, oh, no.
Out loud, you're saying, oh, no.
Yes, no. Like, what was that?
Okay, then other people are thinking you're the crazy one. Run away, children. Run away from the shaking lady.
Then they're having intrusive thoughts about me, and they're kung fu masters, and they've handled me.
If ever someone's been sitting next to me on the airplane, I'm sorry. So all of a sudden, I'm just afraid that plane is going to drop. I mean, okay, true story. We were flying and we hit like the worst turbulence ever. I've never experienced such bad turbulence. And I was sure as many times as we've gone through this, and I know we've talked about it, I was like, this is it. This is how I'm going right here. Because the turbulence was so bad. Like there's turbulence and then there's bad turbulence and then there's like extremely bad turbulence. And then of course you have to pee, right? And I'm like, this thing's not ending. And so I was walking to the back and I was looking at the flight attendant. I'm like, how you doing? And she's like, fine. Like she was super chill.
Like,
what's
what's
wrong
with you?
This is a lot of turbulence. Like, is it going to end soon? And, she looks at me. She obviously could tell I was stressed out. And she's like, well, we knew that there was going to be a lot of turbulence. We were expecting it. This is a lot just in general. She's like, but now that I know what turbulence is, I'm never afraid of it. I'm like, really? Are you sure? Are you sure you're not afraid of this turbulence? And she again is like looking up from her book, like, crazy lady, stop bothering me.
Go to the bathroom and sit back in your seat, buckle your buckle.
Well, I was like, the turbulence just hasn't stopped. And she's like, oh, I know, this has been a lot. And she's like, our job is just to let you know that there's turbulence. Like, if you have to go to the bathroom, go to the bathroom. Like, nobody's going to stop you. I'm like, I know.
That's good to know.
Yeah, they won't stop you.
I mean, I see it. There was one time, okay, we went to Hawaii. They kept warning us, right? They're like, it's going to hit. We won't be able to get out of it, blah, blah, blah. Like, get ready, go to the bathroom now. So the entire plane stood up. I kid you not, but
the line is the whole plane, the length of the plane.
But here's the thing. I was paying attention because I have to pee every hour. And I'm like, if I have to sit here for an hour and a half, I am going to the bathroom at an hour 29. So like I had my timer set as soon it was like I knew it was going to hit in 5 minutes. I got up, went to the bathroom. As they make the announcement, as I'm in the bathroom, I get out and there's a line through the entire plane. Anyway, we barely hit turbulence.
Are you serious?
But they were like, you guys, yeah, barely. We hit some and then we started hitting. He's like, here it is, guys. I'm not even letting the flight attendants get up. And I'm like, okay, here we go. And it was like a minute and then it was fine. And I'm like, okay. And then people started popping up and going to the bathroom. They're like, all right.
I just want to say this.
Anyway.
Grandma Vance would have been so proud of you.
Time.
Grandma Vance would have been like, that's right, Andy. Like, you timed that perfectly. Good job. She probably.
We were all us girls. We're
she
taught.
probably trained you to do that, you know? Like,
she's probably the reason why I go to the bathroom every hour on the hour.
Well, for sure that, but just in general, like, okay, think ahead, plan your bathroom stops accordingly, even when you're on a plane and there's turbulence. That totally is Grandma Vance.
Totally. And my first thought when I go anywhere is, where's the bathroom? And this links because I have bathroom anxiety. Like, my anxiety for turbulence now is that I'm not going to be able to go to the bathroom and I have to really go. So now that you've said, like, just confirmed, like, you can actually get up anytime.
The flight attendant really, was like, it's no big deal. And I mean, she was reading a book. I mean, again, it was crazy.
Was it like dipping? Was it
Dude,
like
it was
falling?
bad. Yeah. Like, you're like, like your stomach, you know?
Yes, like it kept dropping.
I've never experienced it so bad. And again, there's your intrusive thoughts. So fine, I'll admit that I've had them.
They have them. If you're a mom out there and you feel like you've had a lot of anxiety and you felt shame or frustration, just know that it's normal. It happens. If you're going to have a baby, or if you know someone's going to have a baby, warn them. I'm so glad my daughter knew, but I didn't even think to tell her. And I was talking to another friend who's knew someone who had a baby recently who they were struggling with that. And I'm like, oh yeah, I totally went through that all the time. I had anxiety for years, but I also had anxiety. For years. It didn't help. If you have OCD or anxiety, the intrusive thoughts are worse because it just feeds it. If you have OCD, then you're going to think about it more and more. Like, you're going to keep those thoughts. And if you have anxiety, you're going to replay those thoughts and try to figure out how to stop those from happening, even if they're not supposed to be there, or you'll feel stressed that you think that that thought came. Anyway, I won't get into it. I feel like we've talked enough about it. But what are we going to talk about next episode?
On the next episode, again in February, congratulations, we're going to talk about things you can do or strategies that you can use when you have intrusive thoughts. We're not self-help, we're not experts, and we're never going to tell you what to do. But here's some ideas if you wanted to try this.
What the experts say, and those of us who've gotten A's in calculus, what we have to say about it. Right. That's all I'm saying.
It's going to be great.
That's it.
Join us.
You're going to want to share it, like us, add us on Instagram. Do it.
Tell all your mom friends. It will be a great conversation starter. Hey, remember that time? Hey, I had this thought. Let's talk about it. We're starting a conversation. We're helping moms start conversations.
And you know what? This week, I'm going to really try to remember to post. There is a TikTok of a girl who says her intrusive thoughts out loud in like a funny reel. So anyway, it's funny. You'll love it. You'll relate. And that's it. We'll see you guys later. Bye. I'll dance you out. All right, that's all we have time for today. We got to wrap it up, unfortunately. But just remember, you might think you're doing just okay, but we think you're doing really great.
Thanks for hanging out with us today. We hope you have a great Mother Funny day. Please like and share our podcast.
But please don't tell our moms.